Hello again. I'm your outdoor friend Cordell Anderson. I've been working for a while on something I'm calling Open Our Eyes to the Visions of Nature, which is an adaptation of Proverbs 29 and 18 from the Old Testament, rewritten to say, without vision or the ability to see and appreciate, the people might perish, or at least not enjoy nor be inspired as much by the beauties of this earth. This slideshow won't only show some of the beautiful visions of nature I've witnessed in 2013 and would like to share with each of you, but has a life and death segment on one life form we need to understand better or it could kill us. So let's have fun and be inspired, but learn something that might just save your life and the life of your loved ones. As in all of my YouTube videos and photo essays, my hope is to open eyes to the marvels most people never see nor understand. For me, they are powerful witnesses of a great Creator's hand in all the amazing beauty that is the high Uinta Wilderness and surrounding hills, valleys, and drainages. We will call this video number 8 from 2013, Open Our Eyes, beginning with backpack number 1 to the Granddaddies, which is part of the high Uinta Wilderness, a wilderness area being where earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. We'll begin on the North Fork of the Duchesne River, traveling up towards DeFaze Dude Ranch and Hades Canyon, and then up to the Grandview Trailhead. But as we go along the river, we notice over on the left, a tree that has been fallen by a beaver, and there he is working at it still. We finally get up into the Granddaddies, and there's a little creek, little stream going down into Granddaddy Lake, and if we get close and look and open our eyes, we will notice hundreds of native cutthroat trout that are moving up the stream to spawn. This happens in the early summer of each season, and it's an amazing thing to see. Back to the stream, there's some little white specks on the one bank, and we zoom in and we see one of the first flowers of the season in the high Uintas, oftentimes even breaking through the snow. This is a marsh marigold. And if we'll get closer and be able to appreciate more its beauty. There's another flower that's very similar to it, but if we look at the leaves, we'll notice it is quite different. This is the white gold flower. Here we are at Palisades Lake, which was my objective on this first trip. And as we walk around the shore, we a little bit of red fuchsia-like color catches our eye, and as we zoom in, we see the bog laurel beginning to develop, and then later it opens up into this beautiful flower. Of course, as I backpack, being an old guy, I hike at a stalking pace, which is a great advantage because it permits me to see these beautiful visions of nature, like this young fawn that I was able to get very, very close to, and not quite so close to his daddy. The papa mule deer is escaping. As we go along, other things catch our eye. Yellow is a very predominant color among wildflowers in the Uintas, and this one happens to be what we call the glacier lily, or more correctly, perhaps it should be called the fawn lily. And then, of course, we begin seeing one of the 4 different varieties of alpine buttercup. From the lower elevations right up to above timberline, you can see different varieties, and you'll notice the flowers are oftentimes very similar, but the leaves are different. And then we see the beautiful little wild candy tuft. And as we move along, we recall meeting with our friend Mike Packard and his backpacking class from the University of Utah. And we've talked about them, and we're grateful for having run into them, but we want to look at what they're stepping on. They're stepping on a ground cover that's very common in the Uintas, and I haven't found out its name yet, but most people don't realize that this in the early spring or early summer has a little tiny flower about 1/8 of an inch in size, and we can zoom in on it to appreciate the beauty of this little flower, which is very common in the early part of the summer. Or also in the early part of the summer, we see spring beauty, which is also a tiny flower, and maybe some of us need to take a magnifying glass with us up in the Uintas, because that's what's required to be able to appreciate the beauty of many of these flowers. This stream that gushes down and crosses the road near the Grandview Trailhead is one I always stop at, and I always fill my water bottles, assuming that it is the best water in the state. My next trip up there, I'm actually going to hike up the mountain and see where it comes from to make sure that it's safe. But since I'm still alive and I've drank a lot of water from it, I guess we're probably all right. Down along the North Fork of the Cheyenne River, we come to Hanna. Go through all this ranching country, and near the country store there is the little museum that most of us don't notice. I ignored it for many years until this year, but I stopped to see this museum put together by Snooks Roberts, who died last year at 98. But if you knock on the door, his widow, Tracy, who's 93 in 2013, will be happy to show you this wonderful museum that not only has the only bootlegger still west of the Mississippi, but also has things like these Mormon shackles, or maybe more correctly call them hobbles. As we swing towards the west to swing around to the north side of the Uintas, we go by the Starvation Reservoir, and there's a pullout there that most people just speed on by, but it's a nice place to stop, and you learn about some of the first white people that saw the High Uinta Mountains in 1776. Father Escalante and Dominguez that came up the old Spanish Trail, which means that it was a trail that already existed, and the history tells us, although not too many people know about this, that the Spaniards actually were in the Uinta Basin in 1540, but they were able to see the Uintas towards the north. As we travel around, there is a kind of dull flower that is not very impressive unless you get close to it, and this is the showy milkweed, which is actually just an incredible little flower with all kinds of little starry-shaped flowers, and so that's the showy milkweed. We have swung around to the north side of the Uintas and on North Slope, and we're going up Middle Fork of Black's Fork, very little visited, and we see another of the early flowers in the Uintas. This is heartleaf arnica. Arnica, a very beautiful flower that you see along in the shade of the forest, and also a little tiny flower that usually goes unnoticed is very, very tiny. It's called everlasting or pussy toes. And then up there I saw a bluebell, but a miniature bluebell, which I had never seen before, which I thought was just really beautiful. And another little tiny flower, which is about, at the biggest, a fourth of an inch in size, is a wild violet. And there you have to really get close to appreciate it. But at Middle Fork, I came on a couple of new varieties of flowers that I haven't been able to identify yet. There's this red one, and there's a white one that seems to be very, very similar to it. And I've really worked hard on trying to identify all these new ones, and some of them I've got the identification, and some I still got some work to do. But you see, as you go along the stream, a luminescent red color or fuchsia color, and this is the Perry primrose. And as I go up the trail, I'm impressed by even the dead wood, like this tree here, and this is what I do with them. I put it on Photoshop, and I erase the background, and I make beautiful frames like for my business card, and you'll see others a little bit further along. Even the Forest Service hasn't noticed this cross, which is like a monument to a lover of the outdoors, Sam Gallegos. The obituary is there. If you want to go across the meadow, leave the trail and go across the meadow, you'll be able to read his obituary. Or go to one of my YouTube videos up the Middle Fork, and you can read it too. Up there you start seeing a lot of stumps. And up there I was after ruins. Ruins of what they call the tie hackers, who were Irish lumbermen at the time the Transcontinental Railroad was being built across Wyoming. These Irish lumbermen were sent into the North Slope of the Uintas to work 12 months a year right through the winter with their broadaxes, making by hand millions of railroad ties that they would accumulate behind what they called splash dams. And then in the spring, when the runoff came, they would blow these dams with dynamite, and splash was what would happen, a big splash, and take these the railroad ties down into Wyoming. But up there, I was able to locate and identify and photograph 14 sites, which actually I concluded was a Swedish community of tie hackers from 1912 until the 1940 period. Up there early in the spring also you see, if you look closely down in the ground, some little red sprouts that also go unnoticed, but as they grow they become a beautiful flower. This is stonecrop. Of course I rest often when I come to beautiful pine groves like you see here, and resting I look up and see more beauties of nature with these pine cones being formed. And of course as you stop, oftentimes you'll have a little buddy come around your camp, the least chipmunk, who wants a handout. And as you progress up the drainage, you see you have a little good luck by seeing this red clover, and then you begin seeing a number of varieties of radiant red flowers. This is the wavy-leafed paintbrush, and there are 4 different varieties of red paintbrush, and then there's this yellow one, yellowish white. This is it's a hairy stemmed flower, but this is the sulfur paintbrush. In the shadows, if you're looking carefully, you'll see this beautiful flower, the Colorado columbine, graceful and almost divine in its impression that I get. And then you see the little charming little alpine shooting star. And up there I have found a flower, which the flower looks like Hartley Varnica, but you look at the leaves and you see that it's not, and I have not been able to identify this one yet. And I haven't seen it in any other part of the Uintas either. And then there's this one here, which is down down on the ground, a very low-lying flower that is first yellow and then it turns red. On Bald Mountain, it's like this one here, a beautiful leaf and flower. And then you see lovely buttercups of a different variety, and you come to this fascinating scene under being guarded by Mount or Tocawana Peak. This is Bob's Lake. It's a bit above timberline. Now coming back down to the lower country, you see sometimes this very dull, drab flower. It's called scorpion weed. But I found one this summer that was just brilliant, as you see here. And down in the lower country, along the fringes of the North Slope of the Uintas, you can also see, as you're traveling towards Wyoming, this ghost town, which is the old Black's Fork Commissary. And I swung around and pulled off the Mirror Lake Road, and actually parked in what I'm probably the only one that's ever realized what it is, but this is the pathway of what was called the Hilliard Flume, which was a flume, as you see here, that came down from Gold Mountain or Gold Hill all the way down into Wyoming, carrying lumber products. And I went up there searching for where it originated, which was the Mill City Ghost Town. And that's so you can see pictures of the flume as it went down into Wyoming, and it started here on Gold Hill, which in the early spring is there's a carpet of these beautiful flowers. It's very stunning in its coloration and in its appearance. This is the old owl claw, or the orange sneezeweed. As you go along the east side of Gold Hill, if you look closely, you'll notice way off to the left across the creek remnants of the flume. Actually, these are loading platforms, and you start seeing stumps, and this stump here happens to be one from the 1912 to 1940 period, but as you get up higher, you see many that are all rotted away, and this was from the 1967 or 1867 to 1880 period of the tie hackers. If you want to learn more, you can get out of Wyoming these DVDs and on my several of my YouTube videos, you can see the details about how to get these DVDs. As you go along looking for the flume, you want to look down, and I was lucky enough to be able to spot some of these square nails that were used. 80 tons of them were used to build the Hilliard flume, and I did find some support structures for this flume, and came out of there with a few artifacts, these nails and a couple pieces of wood. But at the Bear River Park, State Park in Evanston, there is, in the information center there is a replica of the flume that you can see and learn more about it. Of course, I have about a dozen YouTube videos and photo essays on the tire hackers, which include several on the flume. And in searching for it, especially, this was the old period from 1870 until about 1880, but I did find remnants of old cabins that were mostly rotted away. They were from this period. They had fireplaces, and there were square nails. And eventually, I started finding the braces that supported the flume, and some of the rotted planks, and so I have pictures of that and of the support structures going up through the meadow. And so I was very pleased because I've never seen pictures of this in any publications before, but I was lucky enough to find remnants of it. This flume was called it was called a disaster. Sloan's Folly it was called in the beginning, but it actually worked pretty good. It was those that really knew considered it quite an engineering feat for that time period. Up there, I also found a new variety of chickweed. This is mountain chickweed, way up high. And then I also located a new yellow flower, which I have not been able to identify yet. And then, of course, there's the elephant's head. And if you'll get close to these beautiful spires of color, you can see why they're called elephant's head. You can see the elephant head in the trunk there. Up there also, I was going at my stalking pace. I was able to notice some wonderful samples of wild forget-me-nots, and once again, you got to get pretty close to them to really appreciate them. They're very, very tiny flowers. And if you go along at the stalking pace, where you can really see the beauties of nature, you might just see a red squirrel too, which are very common in the Uintas. Of course, to get really close, you've got to be patient, and you've got to go carefully. Now we're back on the South Slope to see more visions of nature in an effort to get to the smallest drainage in the Uintas, which is in Crow Basin, part of the Dry Gulch drainage. But along the way, there's a little store that I finally stopped at, and it's worth stopping at. It's Pinwillies. Not only can you get some good food there, but it's like a museum too. For example, just one thing, the artificial leg of one of the customers who didn't want it buried with her, they cut that there in the store. Now up the mountain towards Crow Basin, I came on another new flower, which once again I have not been able to identify yet, but this lovely little mysterious white and yellow flower was spotted along the trail there. And this is an aerial view of Crow Basin, loaned to me by my friend Jonathan Jousey. And there you see Jackson Park, which is up on the mountain. And you go up through here to get to, and then you have to drop into Crow Basin, of course. But up there, I was blessed. I've been blessed several times with seeing bull elk. And this summer, hearing some of the elk in panic mode, being chased by a pack of coyotes. But so this is Jackson Park, and the escarpment there that you've got to get down into Crow Basin. And in doing so, a couple of years ago, I had one of the greatest experiences of my life, a real vision of nature, which was when lightning was just right on top of me. The thunder and the lightning hit at the same instant, and I had dancing all around me little wavy wisps of electricity. So that was kind of scary, but it was an incredible experience to have had and survived. But there's Crow Lake, and I had to get down to it, and I did find a way finally, which I call the Yeehaw Trail, and down along down in the canyon. I was able to get pictures of Rose Crown, and then along the first lake was blessed with being able to see a couple of young elk across the lake. And this one here, a young bull beginning to grow his antlers amidst a whole meadow full of lupine. One of the very common flowers in the Uintas, but as you get close, very, very beautiful, as you see. And if you notice a butterfly, an orange one, that is the Mormon butterfly, very common in the Uintas, probably the most common butterfly in the Uintas. Finally, Crow Lake and beautiful native cutthroat trout, and here you see a great variation in the native cutthroat trout throughout the Uintas. So this is Crow Lake. This is a couple of lovely, beautiful fish from Marcel Lake in the Granddaddy Basin. And then this is a yellowish colored native cutthroat trout from Alsop Lake on the north slope up East Fork of Bear River. And then this is a beautiful, very large native cutthroat trout from East Red Castle Lake. And then here's the biggest one I have ever caught out of Upper Red Castle Lake in 1962. Weighed just a bit over 8 pounds. And then there's this one here I caught a number of years ago out of the Uinta River at the confluence of Atwood Creek. It was up in the Atwood Basin where they did plant golden trout a number of years ago. And I've heard that they have planted golden trout in other lakes this past summer. I'll report before next summer where they planted them. And then I took off up a drainage, a little East Fork of Bikes Fork, where Bigfoot has been sighted supposedly, and I wanted to give him a chance to find me so I could take a family portrait. And so I went up there and saw all the beauties along the way, these monkey flowers, yellow monkey flowers, and then there's this moss garden with the regular stunning monkey flower. And up there I found there was like a mound like we would find down in Guatemala among the Mayans, like I had on my plantation down there. I don't know exactly what that's all about, but that was it's a fascinating thing that I'd like to learn more about one day. Now we come to the life form, which is can be deadly. And I want to, as we're looking at a whole bunch of samples that I was able to photograph up a little East Fork. It just happened to be the right time, I guess, of the summer. But let me talk a little bit about mushrooms. But up the what I call the Bigfoot Trail in Little East Fork, I was noticing more mushrooms than usual, and soon was getting photos of the unique ones. Mushrooms are one of the most mysterious life forms. The Greeks believing they were from Zeus's lightning. And then some of the native peoples of the Americas called them the food of the gods. There are more than 10,000 varieties that have been identified in North America, but they figure that that's only 10 to 20% of the total that exists. So there are many that are unidentified so far. And identification is sometimes very difficult and very, very frustrating. And even the experts say that you've got to be very humble to study them, because oftentimes you have to admit that your identification of them was wrong. They're famous for being poisonous, but only about 20% are, but only 1% being totally deadly. So some of the common names will kind of give you the idea. Some of them are beautiful names like Fairy Ring, Pretty, Prince, Honey, Sweetbread, Fried Chicken. And then there's some sinister names like Poison Pie, Hated Amanita, Slimy Cap, Deceptive Milky, Corpse Finder, Death Cap, and Destroying Angel. There are more edible than and some very tasty than there are poisonous, but the poisonous ones are so bad you want to be awfully careful. For example, one has symptoms of rocket fuel poisoning, and then others like the gray panther, causes delirium, raving, coma-like deep sleep. And then death cap and the destroying angel, which are the deadly variety, you don't actually start getting sick until about 10 to 14 hours after eating them. And then you kind of go into remission, but then on the third or fourth day, when you think you're all better, all of a sudden your liver and kidneys fail, which is, if you survive it, you're going to have a transplant to be able to keep living. The death will come in 5 to 10 days. You'll have vomiting, diarrhea, cramps, and of course kidney and liver failure. And without treatment, death comes. To identify them, you've got to look at all kinds of things. Their shape, their size, their texture, their color, their odor. You've got to see whether they have gills or not, whether the gills are attached to the trunk or not attached to the trunk. And from those gills, you have to make a spore footprint, and which is very key in identifying them. And then you have to see whether they have a skirt, or whether there are rings, whether there's a cup around the base. And sometimes to get identification, or to make identification, there's got to be a microscopic examination. But never accept an identification to eat one unless all the evidence confirms that it's safe. So this is very important. Now, I might mention the cycle of nature depends a lot on them for decomposition of wood and other organic matter. And then there's some of them that form symbiotic relationships with other life forms. For example, the fungi and algae get together and they form lichens. And lichens, there are over 3,000 varieties of them in the Rocky Mountains. And so this is, they get together and cooperate for each other's survival. So it's a fascinating lifestyle, or life form, which I'm going to be learning more about, and I'll probably end up having some YouTube videos just on mushrooms one of these days. But so here is the Audubon manual, field manual for identifying them, which is the one I use. Of course, I have others too, but this is probably the best one. And then here are the lichens, which actually, like I say, is a partnership, relationship between an algae and a fungi. So we'll go on now. This is false dandelion, a very, very interesting plant, which dandelions you can eat. It's like the spinach of the weed world, but you don't want to eat false dandelions. And then there's this brilliantly colored fireweed, and then stunningly symmetrical thick stem aster, and then way up high, up on Squaw Pass, I found this alpine mountain chickweed, which is different than the other varieties of chickweed, but it's surviving up there in very, very harsh conditions. Of course, wood again always attracts me. To me, I first started envisioning what I could do with the pictures of this wood, and so I started working on Photoshop and isolating them, or erasing the background, making frames, as you see here. And then here's one that I haven't actually worked on yet or isolated. I did with this aspen, and here's just a sample of a frame that I made out of that. And then here's more, and there's one that I've used a lot for my business cards, and here's just some other pictures that could be put in frames like this. Rocks are another thing you want to keep an eye on. Fascinating geology of the Uintas, and here I have made a collection of rocks of the Uintas, and here's a conglomeration of rocks of the foothills. And so it's fascinating to me to be able to notice all these beautiful things of nature. This is Porcupine Lake and the Oweep drainage, which is a very, very very infrequently mentioned drainage in the Uintas. Porcupine Lake produce the most beautiful colored brook trout that I have seen anywhere in the Uintas. This one's from Packard Lake, also beautiful, and here's quite a large one from a no-name lake in the Uinta River drainage, and then this is one that would have been, if I could have got it out of the water and got it down to to a place where I could have it properly weighed, it would be the Utah state record for eastern brook trout. So this is beautiful visions of Oweep drainage and Porcupine Lake. And coming down from there, I got a little sleepy, and so I took a nap amidst in the shade of some pine trees, and all of a sudden a Bigfoot appeared to me in a dream, I'll have to say. So here I had a vision in a dream of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and you can learn about that from my YouTube video up east, a little east fork of Black's Fork. And just down after that experience, of course, all of a sudden, someone kept crashing through the trees, and I was a little bit sleepy-eyed still, but I thought, oh, here he comes. And Bigfoot had a red T-shirt on, but this happened to be Rob Wilcox, who's a mountain runner, and his mountain running skills, running all the way up to that pass and back to his camp, that was to me more incredible than it would have actually been to see Bigfoot. Down the road a ways in Manila, Utah, I met Maddie, and she gave me some pictures of some footprints of Bigfoot that she got, about 15 inches long. So, well, like Rob was saying, hey, maybe there's something to this, huh? Well, here's the north slope of the Uinta Mountains, beautiful side of nature with beautiful cattle. And here's a flock of geese out there grazing too, and then of course there they are flying away. And there I stopped at the sign where it talks about the first mountain men rendezvous in 1825, and I went down the road to find the exact spot, or as much as I could find the spot where it actually happened. And but this first mountain men rendezvous on the Henry's Fork that comes out of the Uinta Mountains, it was just a who's who of important mountain men and explorers of the Old West. And one of them that I have come to really appreciate and admire was Jedediah Smith. And so I, up in the Uintas, I found the fifth highest mountain in Utah, 13,387 feet high, that didn't have a name, and so I've named it Mount Jedediah. And this is near Trail Rider Pass in the Uinta River drainage. So there's Mount Jedediah, and you can see it on this shot right behind Kings Peak. There's Kings Peak and Little Kings Peak, and then there's Mount Jedediah, and there's Gilbert Peak is in that picture too on the left, which is actually the third highest mountain in Utah, and then there's Mount Emmons. So those are the highest. In that area, going along the north slope of the Uintas, I got some beautiful pictures of these handsome and very graceful sandhill cranes, and then I stopped at this little store, the only store between Mountain View and Manila. And I noticed it's interesting. It says the hours there open from 11 to 6 some days. So it's kind of a easygoing life up there. And I noticed on the gas pump that gasoline cost 28.9 cents per gallon. And that must have been the price when Nyla, the owner of the store, first started living in Wyoming 47 years ago. So that's she thought that was pretty funny to still have the price of gasoline out there on her pump, 28 cents a gallon. And so as we come to a conclusion, this program, my experiences, beautiful flowers, graceful and handsome antelope, and radiantly colored subalpine gumweed, and then more antelope, and then this magnificent flower, which is oxeye daisy, and I got a shot of a young grouse too. And then there's, of course, the most incredible picture of all for the whole summer was this conglomeration of incredible and magnificent friends, my new High Uinta Wilderness friends for the summer. And so, well, those are some of my visions of nature from the summer, and so for more information and continuing visions of nature, keep your eyes on my website, www.cordelmanderson.com, and I will share with you all that I can and of all the beauties of this earth. In my continuing efforts to conclude the High Uinta Wilderness Project, which is probably going to take me another couple of summers. Now that I'm in great shape and don't have pain for the first time in 30 years, in my 79th and 80th years, I still have some trips planned. So keep an eye on my efforts and to share with you all of these beauties of nature.